I was standing in the back of the crowded gym, holding a small gift bag for my niece, when my older sister, Danica, stepped in front of the aisle and blocked me. She looked me up and down like I was a stranger who wandered into the wrong event. Then she said, "You didn't earn a seat here. Stand in the back where you belong." Her voice was sharp enough that the entire row heard her. My parents sat only a few feet away, pretending not to notice. My father shifted in his chair. My mother looked straight ahead at the stage. No one said a word for me. Families all around were taking photos, hugging their kids, and celebrating. I stood alone, fighting the sting in my chest. This was supposed to be my niece's special day. I came to cheer for her, not to be pushed aside like I was nothing. I stayed in the back because I didn't want to cause a scene. I held the gift bag tighter and focused on the stage. But deep inside, something felt different. I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. The hook of everything that happened that day began with that one sentence Danica threw at me, and it ended with the last thing she ever expected. Because when they called my name from the stage, the entire crowd turned to look, including her. My name is Kaya Bennett, and I grew up being the quiet daughter in a loud family. My older sister Danica was the one who always stood in the spotlight. She was the cheer captain, the straight A student, the one who got all the help, all the praise, and all the attention. I was the girl who worked part-time jobs after school, paid my own way through community college, and helped take care of my niece whenever Danica needed me. I never complained. I believed that if I stayed supportive and steady, my family would appreciate me for who I was. But over the years, I learned something painful. In my family, being quiet meant being invisible. When Danica succeeded, everyone clapped. When I achieved something, they said, "Good job," and moved on. It became normal for them to overlook me, and I accepted it because fighting for space never seemed worth it. The person who made it worth it was my niece, Kaylee. She was the only one who saw me clearly. She trusted me, asked me for advice, and shared things with me that she didn't share with her parents. When she struggled in school, I helped her study. When she doubted herself, I was the one who stayed on the phone with her until she felt strong again. A few months before graduation, she came to me with an essay she wanted to enter into a major national writing competition. She wasn't sure she could do it. I sat with her, read drafts with her, and pushed her to believe in her own voice. She submitted it quietly, and I told her that whatever happened, she should be proud of herself. My family never knew I helped her. I never needed them to. That morning, I arrived early to the graduation ceremony, hoping that for once, things would feel normal. I wanted to sit with my family, cheer for Kaylee, and take a photo together afterward. But when I tried to take my seat, Danica stepped in front of me and told me I had no place next to them. She said it without hesitation, as if it was a natural rule she had the right to enforce. My parents didn't challenge her or even question it. They let her decide where I belonged. As I stood in the back, surrounded by families hugging their graduates, I realized I had spent most of my life standing in the background for people who never saw me. I didn't come there for them. I came for Kaylee, and she was the only reason I stayed. What I didn't know was that the ceremony was about to turn everything upside down. My sister had no idea what Kaylee had written in her essay, and she had no idea who the school invited to honor the winner. She thought she controlled the moment. She had no idea what was coming. If you're enjoying the story, make sure to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. As the ceremony began, the principal stepped up to the microphone and welcomed everyone. The graduates sat in neat rows in the center of the gym, their navy gowns shining under the bright lights. Parents and relatives filled the bleachers, waving and taking pictures. Everywhere I looked, people were celebrating their children with pride. I stayed behind them all, trying to ignore the pressure gathering in my chest. I could see my sister in the third row, close enough to the stage that she would appear in every official photo. Danica always found a way to be in the center of attention. She sat with her legs crossed and her chin lifted, like she owned the entire event. Her husband Clark sat beside her, checking his phone between claps. My parents sat on the other side, leaning forward every time a new group of students stood up to receive honors. Their seats were half empty, but none of them looked back at me or motioned for me to come forward. It was as though they had decided to erase me from the picture of our family. When the assistant principal began reading the list of graduates, my heart softened a little. Kaylee looked beautiful in her gown, smiling nervously and twisting the tassel on her cap. She kept glancing toward our family. When her eyes found me in the back, she raised her hand in a small wave. I waved back, trying to hide how uncomfortable I felt. Her smile was the only thing keeping me grounded. As the ceremony continued, I noticed some parents around me whispering. They looked at the empty seats near Danica and then at me. They had clearly witnessed the moment earlier when I was blocked from joining my family. A woman standing next to me whispered, "Do you want my seat? You can squeeze in." I thanked her, but I didn't move. I didn't want to force myself into a place where I was unwanted. I had spent too much of my life doing that. After the diplomas were handed out, the principal returned to the podium. "Before we conclude, we have a special award to present," he said. "Each year, we recognize one student with the National Future Voices Scholarship, a competitive honor for exceptional writing and leadership. This year, our winner worked closely with a mentor who showed outstanding dedication and support. We invited that mentor to join us today so we can honor both student and guide." The crowd quieted with interest. My pulse quickened. I knew this moment had the power to shift everything, but I still didn't know how it would play out. I felt my palms grow warm as I imagined the possibility of being called forward. The idea scared me as much as it excited me. For years, I stayed hidden to avoid trouble, but part of me wanted the truth to finally come into the light. Danica leaned over to my parents and whispered loudly enough for others to hear. Kaylee achieved everything on her own. She didn't need any help. She acted as though she was defending her daughter's pride, but her tone carried the same superiority she had thrown at me for years. Her words dug deeper than they should have, and I felt something inside me tighten. The principal continued speaking about the students' accomplishments. This year's winner wrote a compelling essay about perseverance and the importance of having someone believe in you, even when life feels overwhelming. The judges were moved by the emotional depth of her work, and they also appreciated the guidance she received from someone she described as her safe place. The room stirred again. I felt a lump form in my throat. I recognized those lines. Kaylee had written them after a difficult week, when she had cried in my kitchen and told me she felt like she disappointed everyone. I had held her hand and reminded her that her voice mattered. I had no idea she put that moment into her essay. Danica adjusted her posture and smiled proudly, assuming the praise was directed at her. She even whispered, "I knew she would win something big." My parents nodded along. Their confidence in a story they didn't even understand made my chest ache. At that moment, I realized the truth. They had never cared to ask who helped Kaylee or supported her through the hardest months of her senior year. They assumed it was never me. They assumed I had nothing to offer. And that assumption was about to collide with reality in front of an entire room. The principal took a breath, preparing to read the name. My heart pounded as the moment built to its breaking point. The gym fell silent as the principal paused to let the anticipation settle. The sound of cheering from earlier faded into a thick, expectant quiet. Every parent, student, and teacher turned toward the podium. Kaylee sat upright now, her eyes wide and hands gripping the edges of her chair. My heart thudded so loudly in my chest that I could feel the vibration in my fingertips. The principal lifted the envelope containing the winner's name and said, "This year's National Future Voices Scholar is Kaylee Rowan." The room erupted into applause. Kaylee covered her mouth in shock, and her classmates around her cheered and patted her back. My parents jumped to their feet, clapping hard. Danica threw both arms in the air as if she personally earned the award. She grabbed Clark's arm and shook it with excitement. "I told you she would shine today," she boasted. "She gets that from me." I smiled softly, proud of Kaylee with every fiber of my being. But I knew the moment was not finished. The principal had not yet mentioned the mentor. My stomach tightened with a mix of fear and hope. I stood still, afraid to expect anything but unable to ignore the possibility. The principal raised his hand for silence. "Kaylee's achievement is not only a reflection of her talent, but also the dedication of the mentor who guided her. This mentor demonstrated exceptional commitment and played a major role in helping her develop her voice. We are honored to have this mentor with us today. Kaylee's eyes searched the crowd, moving from row to row until they reached the back where I stood. Her expression softened with a warmth that only the two of us understood. Danica noticed her gaze and frowned, confused. The principal then spoke the words that broke the dynamic of my family in one clean stroke. "Will Ms. Kaya Bennett please join us on stage?" The gym shifted as hundreds of heads turned toward me. Some parents looked surprised. Some students whispered. A few people who had seen me pushed to the back earlier stared with raised eyebrows, fully understanding the irony. My breath caught in my throat. I had spent so many years fading into the background that this moment felt unreal. But the moment was real, and it was mine. I stepped forward slowly, clutching the small gift bag at my side. As I walked down the aisle, people moved aside. They smiled. They nodded. It felt like the room itself opened a path for me. Every step I took carried a release of years of silence and swallowed pride. When I reached the row where my family sat, Danica jerked back as if I had startled her. Her smile collapsed into a tight line. She whispered, "Why are they calling you?" Her voice held a tremor I had never heard before. "For the same reason they called Kaylee," I answered calmly. I was part of her journey. My mother blinked at me, stunned. My father's hands dropped to his sides. Clark stared straight ahead, unsure how to react. The people around them watched with open curiosity, sensing a story unfolding. I continued forward without waiting for their response. As I climbed the steps to the stage, the applause grew louder. The principal greeted me with a warm handshake and a plaque recognizing me as the Mentor of the Year. The words engraved on it made my eyes sting, for believing in a voice before the world heard it. Kaylee ran into my arms as soon as I reached her. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "I wanted them to know the truth." Her voice shook with emotion. "I wanted everyone to know what you did for me." I held her and felt a mix of pride and relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Across the gym, Danica's expression hardened. She looked like someone who had spent her whole life building a throne, only to discover that the respect she wanted had never belonged to her in the first place. The principal invited Kaylee to share a few words. She stepped up to the microphone and said, "I wrote my essay about someone who reminds me that I matter even when I forget it. Someone who stays patient with me, pushes me, and tells me the truth when I need it. My mentor is my Aunt Kaya, and I am honored to share this moment with her." The crowd responded with another wave of applause. Teachers nodded approvingly. Students cheered. My chest felt full in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't only about being recognized. It was about hearing someone I loved say aloud what my family always ignored. Standing there beside Kaylee, I knew a shift had taken place, not only in how others saw me, but in how I saw myself. All the years of silence, all the moments where I allowed myself to be pushed aside, ended with one announcement that carried my name. The turning point wasn't the award. It was the choice to walk forward and claim my place without waiting for permission that was never going to come. The applause slowly faded as the principal invited both Kaylee and me to stand at the center of the stage for photos. Camera flashes lit the air like small bursts of lightning. Kaylee held her certificate proudly, and I held the plaque they had given me. For the first time in years, I felt a warm sense of belonging settle in my chest. I was standing in a space where my worth was visible, undeniable, and recognized without hesitation. After the official photos, the principal announced that Kaylee's essay would be read aloud by one of the English teachers. The room quieted again as Ms. Hanford stepped forward. She opened the folder and began reading the introduction. The essay described a moment when Kaylee felt overwhelmed by expectations and feared she would fail her classes. She wrote about sitting at my kitchen table, crying into her sleeves while I made her tea, and told her she was capable of more than she believed. Hearing my kitchen described in front of a crowd felt surreal. I remembered the exact moment she wrote about. She had been shaking from stress and nearly gave up on the competition. I held her hands and said, "Your voice deserves a place in this world. You just have to give it room to grow." I did not think those words were extraordinary, but she carried them in her heart and turned them into something powerful. As the essay continued, it became clear that Kaylee had written more than a competition piece. She had written a testimony about the impact of kindness, patience, and guidance. She described how support can be a bridge for someone who has lost confidence. She wrote about how my belief in her changed the way she viewed herself. Hearing her words spoken out loud made the room feel smaller, as if every person in it was standing closer, united in the same understanding. When Ms. Hanford reached the final paragraph, her voice grew warm and steady. I dedicate this essay to my mentor, my anchor, and the person who never asks for credit but deserves it more than anyone. Thank you, Aunt Kaya, for seeing me before I saw myself. The gym went quiet for a full second before applause burst again, louder than before. Students whistled, teachers clapped, and many parents nodded with appreciation. A few audience members turned to look at Danica, who sat stiffly in her seat. She tried to smile, but it was thin and shaky. Her face carried a mix of confusion, embarrassment, and something close to resentment. For years, she believed she held the highest place in the family. She built her identity around being the daughter who succeeded, the one who set the standard. But the moment exposed a truth she had avoided. Success is not measured only by praise or status. It is also measured by impact. And that day, it became clear who had made the deeper impact. When the ceremony ended, we stepped off the stage. Some teachers came over to shake my hand and thank me for supporting Kaylee. A few parents approached to say I had inspired them to be more involved with their own kids. I accepted each compliment with gratitude, but my eyes kept drifting toward my family. Kaylee ran to her mother first. She hugged Danica tightly, but instead of smiling, Danica asked, "Why didn't you tell us she was your mentor?" Her voice was strained, almost accusing. Kaylee stepped back and answered calmly, "Because it didn't matter to you. When I talked about my work or my worries, you told me to figure it out. Aunt Kaya actually listened. She made time for me. She believed in me." The statement hit Danica hard. Her jaw tightened, and she looked away, trying to control the expression on her face. My parents listened quietly. Something in their eyes shifted, as if they were finally seeing cracks in the story they had always believed. Clark stepped in with a forced smile and said, "Well, at least everything worked out today." He hoped to smooth things over, but the tension was too heavy to ignore. As the crowd began filling the gym floor, Kaylee grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the large banner hanging by the stage for more photos. "I want one of us first," she insisted, "before everyone else jumps in." We stood under the banner as someone offered to take our picture. When I placed my arm around her shoulders, she leaned into me without hesitation. Her confidence, her joy, and her pride were contagious. For the first time in my life, I felt like I stood beside someone who chose me openly and without apology. From the corner of my eye, I saw Danica watching us. She looked smaller than usual, as if the weight of the moment pressed down on her. Her smile had faded hours earlier, and it still refused to return. That was the real climax. Not the award, not the applause, not even my walk to the stage. The real climax was the truth settling into place. Her smile fell first because she finally realized she could not control every narrative. She could not decide who mattered. She could not erase me, no matter how many times she tried. And the whole room saw it. The sun had moved lower in the sky by the time we all stepped outside the gym. Families were spread across the lawn taking photos, hugging their graduates, and laughing together. The graduation banner fluttered gently in the breeze. Students in navy caps tossed them into the air while the crowd cheered. It was the kind of joyful chaos that should have soaked everyone in warmth, but my family stood in a tense, quiet pocket away from the noise. Kaylee held her award tightly as she walked beside me. She was glowing. Her happiness made everything around us feel lighter. She had earned this moment, and I was proud to stand next to her. As we stepped into the sunlight, a few of her friends came running over. "Kaylee, that speech was amazing," one girl said. "Your aunt seems awesome." Kaylee grinned and introduced me as if she wanted the entire world to know who I was. For once, I did not shrink back. We took photos together under the archway, then near the fountain, then in front of the school sign. Each time, Kaylee insisted we take another one, then another, laughing harder each time. It felt like she was making up for all the pictures I was pushed out of during family events. Eventually, my parents walked toward us. My mother looked tired, as though the weight of everything she heard inside the gym was finally pressing on her. My father had the same expression he wore when he knew he needed to say something important, but was afraid of saying it wrong. My mother spoke first. "Kaya, we didn't realize how much you were helping her." Her voice was soft, almost careful. "We should have asked. We should have paid more attention." I nodded politely, unsure how to respond. Their apology was small, but it was more than what I had ever expected from them. "I didn't do it for recognition," I said. "I did it because she deserved someone to stand with her." My father stepped closer. "You've always been strong on your own. We never worried because we thought you didn't need anything from us. But maybe we misunderstood what support meant." Hearing him say that opened something inside me that I had kept closed for years. All the times I was brushed aside, all the moments when I wished someone would notice me, and all the times I convinced myself it didn't matter, rose to the surface. I didn't want anger to take over this moment, so I simply said, I needed to feel valued, not invisible. My parents exchanged a look that carried guilt, regret, and something like renewed understanding. Maybe this wasn't a full repair, but it was a start. Before I could say more, Danica approached. She walked with a stiff posture, clutching her purse as if it were a shield. Clark hovered behind her, unsure whether he should step in or stay quiet. Danica stopped in front of me and took a slow breath. "I didn't expect that today," she said. Her tone wasn't angry, but rattled. "I didn't know you were helping her with all that." "You never asked," I replied. My voice wasn't sharp or emotional. It was steady. "You assumed you understood everything because you were the parent, but helping her wasn't about outshining anyone. It was about being there when she needed someone." Danica dropped her gaze. "I guess I didn't realize she felt closer to you." The comment stung a little, not because it was wrong, but because it revealed how little she understood her daughter's world. Kaylee stepped forward, standing between us. "Mom, this wasn't about choosing sides," she said gently. "I love you, but Aunt Kaya is the one who helped me believe I could do something real. You were busy." She filled the space you didn't notice. Danica's eyes glistened for a moment, though she blinked quickly to hide it. She tried to smile, but couldn't hold it. "I'm glad you succeeded," she said, directing it toward Kaylee. "That's what matters today." But her voice carried the unmistakable tone of someone who realized her influence had limits and her assumptions had consequences. After a moment, she walked away without another word. My parents stayed with us longer. They watched as more students congratulated Kaylee and as teachers thanked me for supporting her. Several parents came over to shake my hand and say they admired the bond we had. Standing there, I realized something important. Recognition from the crowd mattered for a moment, but the lasting shift was internal. I no longer felt like the quiet daughter in the corner. I no longer felt like the person who had to prove her worth. I was simply standing in a space I had earned, surrounded by people who finally saw it. As the afternoon faded into early evening, Kaylee wrapped her arm around mine and said, "Thank you for everything. I hope I made you proud." I hugged her and whispered, "You did more than that. You made me believe in myself again." We walked to the parking lot together, leaving behind a day that changed our entire family, not through anger or revenge, but through truth, effort, and a voice that finally became impossible to ignore. As I drove home, I understood the real lesson. Sometimes the people who underestimate you are the ones closest to you. Their view of you stays frozen in time until life forces them to look again. And when they do, the picture might be completely different from what they expected. That day, they finally saw me, and I finally saw myself. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and comment where you're watching from.